You are listening to an exclusive on PodHub Network. Your city, your podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Back to the Burgh, presented by the PodHub Network. Joining me today originally from Penn Hills, PA, is a man many of you probably know from Twitter. And if you haven't, I don't know where you've been. Please welcome Joey Bag of Donuts. Joey, what's up? How are you?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. You know, I became friends with Donardo and through the guys
sorry.
around. What's that?
I heard you were friends with Donardo. I said, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know, right? It sucks. But I got to be friends with him through the guys that are around the 412. And that's how I stumbled upon you a few years ago. And you've just grown so much on social media, and it's crazy to me. Just what's that whole experience been like? We'll get into more of it later, but I just got to lead off with that. Like, what's that been like?
It's crazy. I don't really understand it myself. I describe myself just as just a guy who tweets a lot. And yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter all the time, and it's basically it's like another extension of myself. And I just you know, it's grown to a thing where I get to interact with a lot of people, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. So let's talk about your upbringing first. I was told you were brought up by two immigrants from Italy. What was that experience like?
Well, yeah, my mom and dad are from Italy. They grew up there, and they left Italy when they were about in their 20s. And they came here, and they stayed with they already had family here, and so they stayed with them for a while. But yeah, I mean, they're like literally the American dream. They started with nothing. They saved up their money. They bought a house. They started a business. The business was successful for like 30 years. So I mean, they're like the living embodiment of the American dream. It's awesome. And the weird thing is, they still speak Italian, and they still have like ridiculously thick Italian accents, even though they were in Italy like the first 20 years of their life, and the last 60 they've been here, but still they still have that really thick Italian accent. They're like, they're like just those old Italian people. And yeah, my mom is a cooking fiend. She just cooks like crazy. She's making like 1 million Christmas cookies now. My dad's retired. He basically his job right now is just to troll my mom. She hasn't figured it out yet that he just likes driving her crazy, but it's really funny.
So what kind of business were they in?
It was landscaping, and it was a garden center, and they would sell basically like bushes, plants, trees, flowers, stuff like that. And I basically grew up there. I started working there when I was like 6 years old, and I spent all my spare time working there. And it was an interesting childhood. I would bring my toys, like I would, my Transformers and stuff. It was basically like I lived there. I would play with my toys there. I would ride my bike there. I would watch TV there. I remember watching, Saturday morning, wrestling and Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. So, and cartoons and stuff. So yeah, I basically lived at this business.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. I know my family, we had our own business at one point too, but I couldn't work there. I used to go there sometimes, but we did steel fabricating. So
yeah, it's kind of hard for a kid to get into.
They wouldn't let me weld anything. I was 6 years old. I'm like, let me do something. Let me, But yeah, like having a family like that, it's literally built themselves up from almost nothing is pretty amazing. Now, having them being in Pittsburgh, obviously they're immigrants, but in Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's kind of a melting pot of its own. Had they developed any sort of Pittsburghisms, like Yinzerisms? If so, what? You're shaking your head no, so I assume no.
Not at all.
Really?
That
kind of amazes me.
They It's like they never left Italy. They have that
Wow.
thick Italian accent. They don't sound American at all, which I'm the exact opposite. If I go to, like, if I went to, I spent a few days in North Carolina, I started talking like them. I'm like an accent chameleon.
Yeah.
But they nothing. And you know, the funny thing is, my dad hates the Steelers
Really?
because
Oh, no.
for a business reason, because basically any time, basically any Sunday afternoon, anytime the Steelers are playing, all businesses, unless you're like a sports bar or something like that, you're getting shut down because everybody's watching the Steeler game. And he hated that. So me as a little kid growing up loving the Steelers and him like rooting against them, that just annoyed me so much as a kid. But yeah, my parents just it's like they never left Italy with the way they talk.
Wow, that's crazy. Because it is such a melting pot. I feel like our accents are just that, the result of the melting pot. You know, I feel like that's why we say Warsh and Yins and G-Jet and stuff like that.
It is amazing that we have so many awesome ethnic groups in here, and we have we get the benefit of all those. I mean, Little Italy's awesome, and we get we're known for pierogies and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really cool that we get like the best of all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So now moving on, in high school, were you much of an athlete?
No,
No.
I did nothing. Those kind of tied into my parents' business. They needed me to work, so I couldn't be. I wanted to play football, and they wouldn't let me. Sometimes I would like sneak off to play like pickup games and stuff like that. But yeah, I didn't really play sports so much. Now I would go to the games. I went to school in Penn Trafford, and they're the Warriors, and they were green and gold, and we would paint our faces and stuff like that. And they had this giant bell that you would ring when there was a touchdown. So I was like on the bell crew.
Awesome.
So I would go to all the games, but yeah, I never really participated in any sports.
Gotcha. Now, did you end up going to college? Like, obviously I know you from Twitter. I don't know you from your profession, but did you go to college, and have you made a career out of whatever that was?
I went to Pitt.
Okay.
I don't know why, but when I was a kid, I think I blame Dan Marino. I became obsessed with the University of Pittsburgh, and I still am for some silly reason. I don't even know why. It's just one of those things that get like burned in your brain as a kid or something like that. Always loved the University of Pittsburgh, and I went there for electrical engineering, and I got a degree. And I don't do anything with electrical engineering now. I'm my regular job is with an IT company. But yeah, and I was a teacher part-time, like at a community college, which was a lot of fun. It kind of got me out of my shell and got me to be more of a I don't want to call it an entertainer, but it probably led to my podcasting career. That's for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Where did you find like the interest to build a podcast or even build a social media platform? Where did that come from?
The social media stuff just started. I just took to Twitter. I think I started there 2009, 2010, something around about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And you just started, interacting with people and building relationships and stuff. And I think because I'm on it so much, and I tweet so much, and I use it so much and it just it just became like a bigger thing. It just snowballed. And yeah, there's just a lot of, I just get to interact with a lot of people. It's really cool. But the podcast thing started a couple of years ago. Actually, our buddy DiNardo, he created this monster.
Yeah.
He had me on his podcast, and I said to myself, "Oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I want to do this all the time." And I was like a guest. I was like a guest on a couple other podcasts, and it's like, oh my God, I want to do this all the time. I love this podcast stuff. And then it kind of, it just wasn't enough, being on somebody's podcast like once a month or every few weeks or something like that. It's not enough. So it's like, you know what? I think I'm going to have my own podcast. And I asked a couple friends if they would like to do a podcast with me, and they said no. And I said, okay. I was like, there's no way I could do a podcast by myself. So I'm just, forget about it.
Yeah.
And my friends encouraged me, and they kept encouraging me. And it was around like when the Steelers were about to start, like in like their training camp. And I said, you know what? It's now or never. So I decided to try it. And it was such a learning experience, getting a podcast going, creating one, getting it published, all that stuff. I had no idea. That was such a learning experience. It was just fun to figure out. And now I'm, now I'm like four. I think I just finished episode 411. So I did it a lot. I used to do it a lot more. Sometimes there were some weeks I would do like 7 or 8 episodes a week, and just do it all the time. And it got to be a little bit much, and it also got to be a bit much with the family. They weren't real happy that I was spending all this time doing it. So I've cut back a little bit. I do like 2, maybe 3 episodes a week. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I've got to talk to so many people. I think my biggest guest was Sally Wiggin. I cannot believe I got to talk to her.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I'm just, I'm always amazed that people say yes that they want to talk to me. You've had some awesome guests too. It's like,
some of the ones I've gotten, I'm like, whoa, like, I can't believe they said yes. Like we were talking beforehand, Selena Pompiani. I just threw a bone out. I was like, okay, see if this works. And she got back to me right away.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's and it's funny because, like, I don't know, like there's certain people like when I asked Sally Wiggin, I got no response for like 4 or 5 days, and I figured, she probably doesn't want to, and then she responds yes. I'm like, oh my god. So I'm people like me that are on there 24/7, that don't sleep and they're on Twitter all the time, don't understand when people check in to their social media only like once a day or something like that. Like what is this? Like I just talked to Jenna Harner from WPXI, and she was like that. She's like each day we would have a continue our conversation, but she would only respond like once a day. I'm like, is this really going to happen? And it turned out it did, and it was awesome. It's like, boy, it's just like, how are these people? They only check their social media once a day. What are these weirdos?
Yeah, I know. Like, I feel like people like us and like people that do podcasts and keep up with pop culture and media and all this stuff, we don't really realize there's normal people out there. There's normal people that aren't on their phone looking for the next big thing and looking for what's popular. And it's hard to realize, but we're special, to be able to be looking at our phones for so long and still function in the world.
It's weird. And it's funny. I'm sure you've heard people say, I'm taking a break from social media. I'm done with this. I'm leaving. And then, 2 hours later, they're back or something like that. I know that I'm going to be back. I've tried. Exactly. I've pulled that stuff before. It's like, I'm leaving. Goodbye. The big dramatic. I was like, I'm back. Last night with the Steelers game, it got a bit much when the Steelers were losing so bad and stuff. And I did take a break. I did take a walk outside. I took the dog for a walk and just walked around the neighborhood for a few minutes. So just to clear my head. So there are times I need to get the heck away from it. But for the most part, I've just had a really awesome experience on Twitter.
Yeah, I'd say for myself, sometimes I don't realize I'm taking a small break. Like I'll just, I'll be like, oh, I haven't looked at my phone in like 3 hours. Like that's weird, But for me, usually I try not to tweet during Steeler games because I want to be as focused as possible. But then I got like the family group chat is texting about the game, and somebody else is texting me about the game. So then it's like I'm on my phone, might as well go to social media,
See, for me, I mean, I think I asked this question like a week ago. Like, do you tweet during games and stuff? I think it was like 50% do and 50% don't. To me, it adds to it to see what exactly is going on, especially some of the people that some of the people in the know, some of the experts see what they're, what they say or is going on and stuff. But mostly it's just insane reactions.
Yeah.
There's always something that goes on that just people go crazy over. It's never dull when there's a Steeler game on Twitter.
Yeah. So, speaking of social media, who are some of your favorite people to interact with, either famous or not famous, or just a Steeler fan that you found? Who do you love to interact with?
There's so many. There's so many.
Trying to put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many. I can't even name them all. But I have a great, I have my favorites. I have people that I like to talk to all the time. It's another thing is there's a lot of, oh my God, Rocky Blyer responds to me sometimes. And he doesn't realize it. He probably thinks he's just replying to some schmuck or something like that.
Yeah.
That makes my week when he ever, or when, certain famous people or something, like what I'm, what I tweet or whatever. It's like, oh my God. Like that is to me one of the coolest things on Twitter. There's no way on earth, before social media, I could, call Rocky Blyer up and say, hey, what's going on, man? But I could, we could have a conversation on Twitter. It's the coolest thing. So yeah, maybe someday I'll get to talk to him on a podcast.
Yeah, that's something that I would love to do. Rocky is my favorite Steeler of all time. That helmet back there, that's signed by him. I got a jersey signed by him. He's my favorite of all time. So that's somebody who, in the future, I'm hoping to have on this podcast for sure.
I'll bet it's gonna happen.
I hope so, man. But what was I gonna say? It was gonna keep within the social media realms. I guess we could talk about YouTube. I was told that you used to put your mom's cooking videos on YouTube.
Yeah. She is an amazing cook, as evidenced by my weight, but she has no recipes.
Okay.
It's all in her head. She's one of those old Italian ladies that cook a bunch of stuff, and you ask her, well, how did you make this? It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so what I decided to do was, it's like, you know what? I'm going to make a video. I'm going to go to their house while she's cooking, and I will document this. So, maybe someday I'll learn how to do this myself or something like that. And what it turned into was my dad, it was basically, see, if you didn't know my parents, or maybe most Italian families are like this, they're very loud. And my mom and dad, if you didn't know them, you'd think that they are horrible enemies, that they want to kill each other. All they do is yell at each other all the time, and it's the funniest thing. But so I would do these videos, and my dad would just be there trolling her, and she hated it so much. She just wanted to show how she cooked stuff, and my dad's just there egging her on. And it was just the funniest thing. But she kind of caught on, and she kind of didn't want him to be involved.
Yeah.
So I had to stop that. But yeah, I would love to do that again. But and that was another thing, is it was just fun trying to figure out, because usually, I figured out how to do editing with audio, and usually my podcasts are audio, but doing video editing is a whole different thing. And it was a lot of fun trying to figure out, I think, trying to do that. And I love technology, and I try to, it's really hard to do something like that on Windows, but it was super easy to do on a Mac or an iPad or stuff like that. So that made me end up buying a whole bunch of stuff, but still, it was a lot of fun learning how to edit. So yeah, I would love to do more of those videos, but my mom kind of caught on that she doesn't want my dad involved. She wants it to be serious, and what she doesn't understand is her yelling, her and my dad yelling at each other are like one of the best things about the video. But she wants it to be about cooking.
Comedy. It's so comedic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk to you about your collection there you got behind you. When exactly did you start collecting?
So when I went to University of Pittsburgh, and I started at University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg. That was my first couple years. And in Greensburg, there was this this baseball card store. And I would go there all the time, and I would get a whole bunch of baseball cards. So I have a whole bunch of cards, but these are so a lot, but a lot of it is just stuff I've accumulated over the years. But really, in the past like 9 months, I've really started collecting a lot more things because just like a lot of people, everything changed in March. I worked in Robinson. And, I would drive to work every day and stuff. And then, everything happened. And so it said, we're all working from home now. So I was not prepared for that at all. So I basically went into the basement, which is basically the man cave. And, I started to make it quote unquote my home because I had to come from, I had to go work at home. My daughter was a senior in high school. She had to do schooling from home. And my wife, where she worked, she had to work from home also. So we all took like various parts of the house and made them like our offices and stuff like that. But yeah, I just to make myself feel at home, I accumulated some things. One of the things I did, I don't know if you can see this, it's my starting lineup collection.
Okay.
Just like those 90s starting lineup figures. I love that. And a lot of it is just I love Pittsburgh sports. I have a little section of stuff for The Office. I got some Seinfeld stuff. To celebrate, I got a wrestling championship belt because to signify, because I got I won best local Pittsburgh Twitter account.
Yeah.
So I like to think of myself as the man. So yeah, and a lot of it is just a lot of stuff that I just got just to make myself feel at home and make it a little bit easier to basically spend all my time in one place instead of
absolutely
outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can relate to that because I had to move out to New Jersey for work. And now that's why, quarantine, I wasn't working as many hours and I didn't know what to do with my money because I was still working, fortunately. And I was like, well, I don't have much Pittsburgh stuff with me here. So why not start buying all this stuff? I got jerseys that are framed back here that I had on the wall of my old apartment. And it's really just like, I feel like a lot of people don't understand collecting and how it's really just an extension of yourself and trying to make yourself feel like you're in an environment that I guess just is for you. Yeah,
exactly. You want to make it your thing. This is my fortress of solitude.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned wrestling a little bit. Were you a big wrestling fan back in the day?
Yeah. When I started following wrestling, I was about like 8-9 years old, and that was like the start of Hulkamania. Like in the mid 80s, and I would watch Dusty Rhodes and all that stuff. And I became, in the 90s, I became kind of obsessed with it because of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. The internet was kind of a thing back then, but not too much like in the early 90s, but there were some things, but still, just finding out like the behind the scenes things of wrestling really interested me, because sometimes the behind the scenes stuff is way more better than what's going on actually in the ring. And then when the 90s came in the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, that was like so amazing. I would go to things all the time. Oh, and I would go to ECW shows in either Rostraver or in Beaver at the Golden Dome. And that was it was just so fun. ECW, there were literally no rules. It was literally bring your own weapon night. You would bring a weapon and you put it in a dumpster, and then they would bring the dumpster out and they would beat each other over the head with the things that you brought. Like there's no way that would fly today. There's no way they would have bring your own weapon night. So
ECW was really what got me into wrestling, and I didn't get into wrestling until like the mid 2000s because I'm a little younger, and I started watching ECW on Sci-Fi, and I'm like, these dudes are awesome. Like they're just beating each other. Who was it? Sandman would make himself bleed before every match.
Right.
I'm like, these guys are insane, and that's what got me into it. Then I started watching Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown. That's how I got into wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, I watch it now. It's different. I basically took like a 10 or 15 year break in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did.
And I started again like about 5 years ago. So I mean, I still watch it now. It's there's sort of things I really like. The Wednesday night stuff. I really like AEW and what NXT is doing. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, still watching wrestling.
Yeah. So what was your favorite era? Because you have the Attitude Era, you have the era of ruthless aggression, you have all these eras in WWE. What would you say is your favorite?
To me, Attitude Era was number one. It was just so amazing. It's funny when I see now what they call it the Wednesday Night War. AEW and NXT. It's like this is nothing. It's not even close. They're not trying to put each other out of business. Back in the Attitude Era, those companies were literally trying to take each other out. It was absolutely amazing. They did, they would do things like, Rick Rude would show up, but he would be on a tape thing of Raw, and then he'd be at the same exact time. WCW would steal him, and he'd be on an episode of Nitro Live or something like that. Crazy things like that. But it was just so much fun going to shows. And to me, I mean, sometimes I sound like an old fuddy-duddy or something like that, but it was just so much better back then. The wrestlers, the stars, all of them. I mean, just so many of them. But it was also fun just going to the shows. It was just, everybody had a sign. Remember, everybody had that sign. I had some crazy signs. I had a sign that said "Goldust is my mom." I remember that. But it was so much fun. And I went to a taping of Monday Night Raw a few years ago, and it was just not as much fun because to me, what bothers me about Monday Night Raw is it's so long. It's way too long to me.
It's like what,
2 hours
now?
It's 3 hours. Yeah.
It's
2 hours is a good 2 hours is a good amount of time. 3 hours is way too much. I'm like,
how can you fit anything into 3 hours? It's just way too drawn out.
It was, like I remember getting to the arena at like 6. You wait till 7 and they do like dark matches. The thing started at 8. It was over by 11. I didn't get home till 1 a.m. I'm like, geez, this is
like on a Monday. On a Monday too. Like
right, yeah, exactly. Like all this on a Monday night, and like and then you have to go to work the next day. It's like, I don't know. It just wasn't as much fun.
Yeah. So I got a question for you because it was something that I had learned about. I didn't really know about it. I should have, but I learned about it through some friends at work, and that's the Montreal Screwjob. What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny now. I don't think, at the time, I guess something like, if something like that happened now, I don't think anybody would care. Like if, because apparently Bret Hart refused to give up the title where they wanted. So they were afraid that he was going to take the belt and take it to WCW. And Bret Hart says, "Oh, I'd never do that." It's like, are you kidding? They would. I mean, he would never do that, or he said he would never do that. But they would love because they did that with what's her name, Alundra Blaze. She took the WWF Women's title and threw it in the garbage, and that basically ended women's wrestling in WWF at the time. So. It would have destroyed the WWF if Bret Hart did do that. So I totally understand it. And, whether it was at the time, WWF was just getting destroyed, absolutely destroyed by WCW, because WCW just brought in the New World Order and they were changing everything. It was this great, amazing change, and WWF just they were still doing their old stupid things. So and I'm sure they if WWF didn't adapt, they would have gone out of business. But that Montreal Screwjob changed everything, because it basically made a character out of Vince McMahon, whether he wanted it or not.
Yeah.
It made it made everything. It basically set everything in motion for the Attitude Era, and it basically saved WWF. So whether they wanted to or not, it changed everything, and it was amazing. So I just remember at the time, it happened. The Wrestling Observer newsletter was just going crazy with all the details and stuff, and it was just fascinating to see what was going on behind the scenes. And we still talk about it today. Every November, everybody still talks about it. So it was a major event.
Yeah, I needed to get your opinion on it because you lived through it, and I mean, I hear about it all the time, and I just needed someone who lived through that era to tell me their account of it. So thank you.
It was huge. It was this big. It was one of the biggest things that ever happened in wrestling, and it set us. And whether they wanted to or not, it set in motion a whole bunch of things, and it all turned out good. People criticize Vince McMahon, now for the way he handles things, but hey, it's working. It's a $1 billion business, and so. It's whatever he's doing is working, but he's able to adapt to what's going on. But and that was the key back then, is just changing things up.
Yep. So now to wrap this all up and come full circle, you got to throw out the first pitch at PNC Park last year, not last season, but last year. How did that come about, and what was that experience like?
So I don't know why, but I've become friends with the fine folks at Sheets.
Awesome.
I know.
Never a bad thing.
I'm not sure why. I mean, even last week they sent me a box full of they're gobs. They're these chocolate sandwich things with cream in them. That's it. It's just one of the people that I interact with is the Sheets account, and we go back and forth, and they messaged me and said, "Hey, we're having Sheets night at the ballpark, and we want you to throw out the first pitch." Now, I thought it would be, like sometimes how you have the first pitch, it's like, oh, here's a group of people, and either there's like 10 people
it's
throwing
like
out
the honorary
pitch
first pitch and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. No, it was just me. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I didn't practice throwing or anything like that. And I'm down on the field, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. I mean, it's this is like, I don't know, half hour before the game. There's not too many people there. Yeah, whatever. And then when it happens, oh my God, it just hit me. I am in front of thousands of people, and they are watching me about to throw a ball. And I haven't even practiced. I was scared to death. I've never been so scared in my life. I threw like the worst ball. It wasn't like 50 Cent or Dr. Fauci bad. Like, at least it was straight.
Yeah.
But I think it went like 10 feet or something like that and just bounced to the guy. It was just like one of the worst things ever. So it was an amazing experience. It's something I'll always remember, but man, that was terrifying.
Yeah, I feel like
wow.
I feel like that's something that as a fan, you don't really realize how hard that would be until you do it. Like I played baseball all my life until high school, but to go on an MLB mound and, as you said, realize there's thousands of people watching you, I don't think anybody would be able to throw a perfect strike. A normal person would be able to throw a perfect strike.
So at Carnegie Science Center, I don't know whether they still have it or not, but they had this, I think it's called Sportsworks or something like that. And one of the things they have is basically, it's kind of like a batting cage thing where you could try, it's basically get on the mound and throw a strike. I was there for an hour one time. I could not throw a strike to save my life. Not even close.
Yeah.
So I knew I wasn't going to throw it well, but I still wanted to do something. But yeah, it was so intimidating.
Yeah.
Such an amazing experience, but also terrifying as heck.
Yeah, I got one more question. I just thought of it before we get out of here. You mentioned you have a daughter in high school. She's a senior in high school. And, you know, kids these days are all over social media. How does she feel about having a dad who's pretty prominent on Twitter? Like, do you guys interact at all? Do you get into each other's lives on social media?
Nah, she's weird. She's my wife and daughter have nothing to do with Twitter. They don't know anything about it. And it's funny because sometimes people will like know me or recognize me or stuff like that, and they'll say they think of me as a celebrity, which is the stupidest thing ever. But anyway, like they don't understand why people would, you know, it's like, why were you talking to Jenna Harner from WPX? Like they don't understand that it's like a whole separate life that they don't even know about. My daughter, she has her own social media thing. I think she's mostly on Instagram or Snapchat or something like that, which I'm, you know, I'm like, oh, I'm just all about, you know, Twitter. I really don't do much other stuff. So yeah, we don't do any of that stuff. We don't, she knows nothing about what I do, and it's funny because I'm basically I you know, so I'm because of Twitter and stuff, I'm aware of like all the memes and stuff. So sometimes I'm telling her things that even she doesn't even know about. Like you're supposed to know this stuff. You're the teenager, you're a kid. But yeah, I'm, you know, and you know, I get involved in things like, you know, like when she went through her One Direction phase. So, you know, I would take her to concerts and stuff. She's a big Taylor Swift fan. So I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. I'm the one that told her that Taylor Swift dropped an album last week. So I was very happy to break that news to her. So it's, yeah, I basically, I like to say I basically have the brain of a 17-year-old. So sometimes she's way more mature than me.
Yeah, that's funny. It seems like in your own household, you're like that new meme where there's the guy at the party. He's like, nobody knows. Nobody knows I have almost 30,000 Twitter followers. That just seems like that's your life.
Right. Yeah. They're like, really? People know you? Like, yeah, some people know me. Kind of.
Well, that's awesome. Joey, thank you for joining Back to the Burgh this week. It was a really fun conversation, and I enjoyed it a lot. Maybe we can get you back on sometime.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.